and welcome to The Blockchain and Us, where pioneers and thought leaders talk about their journey in blockchain technology, crypto assets, and the token economy. And I'm your host, Manuel Staggers. This episode has support from Core Ledger. Core Ledger is a blockchain-based peer-to-peer transaction infrastructure provider. It enables businesses to document, tokenize, and trade any type of assets in a reliable and flexible environment. Core Ledger makes anything transactable, literally anything. To learn more about Core Ledger's technology and how you can transform your business onto blockchain, visit coreledger.net. That's CoreLedger.net. coreledger.net. My guest today is Andrea Bauer. Andrea is an innovation consultant, strategic advisor, crypto economist, and author on digital media management. She is the founder of Beam Innovation Studio and Decrypt in Berlin, and the co-founder of D.DAY Network, a think tank and community of leading thinkers and creators dedicated to establish a holistic understanding of the effects of our digital era. And now, to the conversation with Andrea Bauer. Hi, Andrea, and many thanks for taking time today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Andrea, I read on your LinkedIn profile, Andrea Bauer can always be found at the forefront of the latest technological wave.
Yes.
So at the moment, currently, what is the latest technological wave?
Yeah, actually, the last wave I think that hit me was the blockchain wave. Definitely. And I went very deep into the community, into the discussions, being part of those discussions, starting to work with projects. And the more you dig deeper, the interesting it becomes, the controversial it becomes. And but I very much, I think, it's still very exciting actually to watch it and to be part of it. Very much, yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do you keep current on those waves?
The last years, I would say. I mean, I'm in the digital space for many years already, working with telecommunication companies. Mobility was a huge topic for me, still is. And, but I was always very much interested in the general the discourse around digitalization and what it means for our society and how it forms us. And, with this, I started in parallel to different projects, also salons or discussion rounds, and based on that, a book occurred, and I think the last year I was very much, especially in the blockchain scene, invited as a speaker and as panelists to be part of some conferences and rounds to discuss what are the effects of digitalization or the blockchain technology itself for society. And and I think the last year happened a lot. So it's I was at many events, at many discussion rounds, and I think this is where I gathered most of my insights and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and also currently we're in Berlin at Rent 24, and how important is it to be in Berlin to spot these new trends?
I think it's quite exciting to be here, very much. And it's and I can definitely say this also by looking into other cities, because there are these blockchain weeks are popping up everywhere. And I really enjoy, I mean, I live in Berlin for many years already. And of course there's also a startup scene, but it's very exciting also that the blockchain scene somehow kind of becomes super strong here. And not just that there are many startups are popping up, crypto startups or blockchain startups, but also there's tons of meetups, communities, startups, also corporates come to Berlin to be close to that community here in Berlin, because it's I think that the discourse is quite vivid, and to be here it's and it's also, it has a good size, you know, the city itself. So it's and with this, I think that you can easily join many conversations and get also quite a diversity apart from the financial applications. So very much also in other industries, like if it is media or if it is energy or if it is mobility. So you have quite a diversity of first applications and pilot projects that become real here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Just before you mentioned the book, or a book that you edited, I think, called the Crypto Economy.
The crypto economy, yes.
Now, crypto with a K.
With a K, yes, that's a distinction. It's not a book that describes to you what cryptocurrency is. That's not the case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the main takeaway from the book?
The main takeaway. So the book is all in all. It's a summary of different discussions about digitalization of our society, and we talked about surveillance. We talked about money, the future of money. We talked about the future of government. We talked about many things, and blockchain or also cryptocurrencies. They were quite a part of it. But the takeaway, all in all, after I finished the book, was that it is enormous. Humanity is enormous in the sense how they come up with ideas around technology. So they always are extremely good in drawing those utopian pictures of what positive how technology can solve all humanity's problems. And so easily, we can end up in a dystopian world. And I think and I think most of the people who were also very much in the beginning of the internet, part of that communities and part of those startups and corporations, and were back in the days like watching this process. Most of them will remember that there were also tons of extremely utopian messages around that. Of course, it is always about more democracy. It is always more about that new businesses, or that many people can earn. Suddenly, like most of the people will remember maybe the long tail from Chris Anderson. And the prediction was, the prediction was that everyone now can earn money and can have like a global market with just a click on a website. But I think the internet, and this is what we see today, turned out completely different. We have like the 5 major data companies in the world, the other 3 in China, and they are the huge platforms, and and of course you can play on their platforms, but it's not very democratizing, I would say, or you're extremely also economically dependent on those platforms. So I will say that.
So basically the platforms make the money and not the creators.
Yeah, or you can take part of it, but they run you and you don't run it. And this is the difference. So the independency is kind of, no one talked about dependency and independency model. So who runs what? And the digital world is quite intransparent for a long time, and then a completely new situation shows up. And I think this is also this is a major thing that I took away from what digitalization is kind of producing with our social life, that there is always this kind of play of utopian worlds and dystopian realities that kind of can come after. And what I just can advise everyone who is working in technology is a sort of a critical thinking. And I can just enforce people to do that in the sense of concentrating on the problems we should solve, and not some utopian pictures that we run after like golden goats or something. And because this is somehow what I think, with this, it's so easy. And but I think the good things in life, they're very hard to get, and you have to work for that. Nothing comes just so.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an interesting point, and I wanted to ask you about that a little bit later, but maybe I can ask it now. Because I mean, I sometimes have that problem, right? That I read about something or see a new technology and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
And I see only the positive side.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I always have to remind myself to also keep a balanced view.
Yeah.
How do you manage to do that? Or how do you advise people to keep that balance about these technologies?
Unfortunately, there's not a real framework like the design thinking process or something. But I really think, when we are think about new technologies, it's you can choose another technology, but you cannot change. You can choose another technology, but you cannot change people. So this is something that I learned over time. And if we take the printing press from Gutenberg, which of course helped that a lot of people got informed, but at the same time, it also triggered a lot of wars. So this is also change.
How did the Gutenberg press trigger wars?
Because it also created in the society an ideological crash or like clash between religious, and this created war. Yeah. And so you can with new technologies you can have a clash of ideologies, and then this is also change. It's not always good, and I think but always when we think about new technologies, introduce new technologies to our society, I think we have to think about what are the problems that we have, very realistically. What are the problems? And I think they're quite clear today. I mean, if you think about, of course, the denials of climate change, I think it's quite clear that it's happening. There is an enormous concentration of rich people and many poor people. So we have our supply chains are not properly managed. Resource allocation could be more efficient. Our energy system should be more local and more resource efficient. So there are many, many things where we know we can do this better. And so it should be clear what the target should be when we are applying technology. And when we apply technology, it's also always about that you should think about that there are always winners and losers in the game. And if we are introducing a new technology, there will be losers. There will always be losers and there will be winners. And the question is if there are more winners than losers in the game. And this is because it is a virtual technology. So you cannot see it. You cannot see the blockchain. I can see a printing press, but many people cannot see the blockchain. So and this is a little bit the tricky part of it, so you can only see it then, by tracking the numbers and seeing, what's really happening. So is it really democratizing? So it is, you don't have a middle class in this new system. So how do you create a middle class in a DAO, for instance? So those questions are open, and an utopian picture cannot help you on this. You have to really manage it. You have to create UX. You have to kind of equip people. Will it make the world a better place? We don't know. But I only would, I think, when it is about applying new technology, I really demand people to not become super emotional about technology. It's just technique. It's just tech. And it doesn't mean that it makes you a better person. Yeah. Or society in general, and I would say.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah.
Let's speak a bit about your work as an innovation consultant for companies, because that's also something you're doing. How do you work with your clients usually?
Usually in long-term projects. So meaning strategic conception or creating concepts and then also bringing those things also to life. Blockchain is a little bit different here because what I experience is that of course there was a huge hype with the cryptocurrency market and of course the attraction was huge and everyone now knows the term blockchain, but and they put it all in their strategy top lists.
Some good marketing.
Some good mark, absolutely. And now don't know what to do with it. And so I found myself more to educate people on what the technology is, where the status is, where the market is, where the communities are. What are they doing? What are they discussing? Where's the direction going? Where are the open questions also? So I wouldn't see myself as an advocate of the topic. So I'm very much someone I encourage critical thinking and to really think about, is it really something that you need? How can you you as a company, be part in the conversation, know where to read your stuff, to kind of be informed, but then also know which system. I mean, it's also a great question, in the sense of what kind of systems do I already have, and how could they interconnect? And I think that there are super exciting solutions, but we are in a research phase at the moment, very much. And so it's a lot of trial and error. And I start with the education, and then I also am involved in some pilot projects. But yeah, it's quite very much trial and error, finding out what really works, because in particular, with the traditional definition and the architecture of the blockchain, there are very sensitive data, could be recorded forever. And in Europe, we have the right to be forgotten. So it is, I think most of the things are now happening more in the machine-to-machine context, rather than end user data, because this is very, it is a legal open field, I would say. This whole discussion, which is on-chain, what is off-chain. And I would more rather describe my work at the moment like working in a lab, compared like being in my consulting role become more a teacher role and a pilot testing role, rather than a classical consultant maybe.
Interesting. But I mean, you work with big corporations as a consultant. So I mean, I want to ask you some of the insights maybe that you have on where do they see this technology in the totally wrong light? Where do they maybe overestimate it, but also where do they underestimate it? What have you discovered there in your work? I
would rather say that I'm more involved in pilot project. Not only in industry, but more in the startup context at the moment, because there's more dynamic, I would say. Because but what I see in the corporate world is that they and this is also a thing that I think it is quite interesting, because we all know that there's a definition in the very in the sense how blockchain kind of started. So there are some attributes related to the blockchain, like being open source, like what decentralized means, and those things. And those things are very quickly get redefined in a corporate surrounding, because there are other regulations, there are other legal dependencies, and with this you have like a lot of private chains, and maybe also another solution, on how to really manage data and how to save them in this very architecture. And what I see is, in the end, just looking into the discourses within the community, and also what I see in with industry partners, major industry partners, that I have the feeling that blockchain itself as a term is already gone. Because it's actually, what you definitely can more see is that it is more about distributed ledger technologies as an overall term. But blockchain is not blockchain anymore. First of all, there's not one. There are many, and those many are not even like blocks and chains anymore. It's it is more about distributed ledger technology. But this is not it can be such a different solution that is behind, a certain use case. And but going back to your question, it was more like what's underestimated. It is, I think, the question is always, I think, do they really take advantage of this kind of architecture? I'm not sure. Because big industry partners, the technology is kind of evolving. And I think we are now in year 10. It is in year 10 now. And technologically, but regarding the business cases, we are maybe in year 2. That it's kind of that people started to understand what it means. And this is quite a complex thing, what's kind of coming up here, because we have suddenly this whole new field of token economics. And where I see actually that we will see another level of microeconomics. So that things becoming interactions that are not measured yet can become a business case. So that things that get...
Do you have an example for this?
I mean, and this is maybe, a world that I want to see is actually, and we know about that resources got wasted. We have a lot of resources in our supply chain that just like fall off, and no one is measuring them. And I would just, for instance, you could measure and incentivize through tokens, maybe. And it's just theoretical right now, of course, to kind of track and trace is one of the use cases that we are, trying to realize in the blockchain realm, to avoid electronic waste, for instance. And so suddenly you can really track electronic waste and make like a secondary or a third or a fifth market even before you completely before it's really become waste, so that the reuse of resources becomes more, and with this you have suddenly new marketplaces. That where we have right now, we are talking about a secondary market, maybe even with cars, and but then it's just about to use things and resources longer, and with this maybe even creating a real circular economy.
Mm-hmm. Through new incentives.
And because everything is like automized, and when we have because what we have today, we have legal entities that are distinguished from each other. So but we see more and more use cases where suddenly entities who are not legally bound to each other have now an independent platform where they got an automized process where they can all just work together, or the services get just interlinked and automatically get paid by the machine-to-machine interaction. We have such a use case with Deutsche Bahn, for instance, which is connected then to the taxi driver. And so you can buy one ticket, and then everyone gets his share, and the platform is managing it. I mean, these are things that only can happening with a blockchain technology, actually, to get legally separated entities have suddenly a connection, and you don't have this administrative, overhead suddenly, which is so cost intense.
And also not the leakage like Uber or Airbnb, who now is the platform and extracts all the data and the value.
Of course, those platforms that are always public, like open source. But this would be actually the goal, to really open also this information up for the many. Would be interesting. And also another case, we discussed just lately, it was about the VAT, between the European states.
Value-added tax.
And normally when you go somewhere, you can actually apply the tax so that you can get it back. And it's, I heard there's like a massive, a lot of money is just not really everything is lacking in payment. And so it's a real issue between the European countries to kind of manage the VAT right. This could be a solution. It could be a technology, but these things need really then be open source and to be seen by everyone. That that you can't just that it's not corruptible. That this is very important, of course. But it's all theory, right? I mean, it's all. You have to. This is all trial and error, because it's not just by we are thinking about it. We can imagine it, but still, I think bringing it into life, that there are a lot of there are always obstacles, that you can corrupt the system, and this is what I want to say. This is very important. So it's not because we're just so innovative and think about new things, and we have found a problem, and blockchain might be the solution. Doesn't mean there are always side effects. And I think especially when we are talking about all these exponential technologies, like Ray Kurzweil is describing them, they can kind of save the world within a few days, but they also can take us down the drain. They're both directions are possible. So it's and this is also what I mean, especially when it comes to government. It's I'm super critic when people say blockchain is per se democratizing everything. I don't think this is right. It's easily corruptible. You can create an autocratic system without seeing it, and you think everything is fine.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This episode has support from Core Ledger. Core Ledger is a blockchain-based peer-to-peer transaction infrastructure provider. It enables businesses to document, tokenize, and trade any type of assets in a reliable and flexible environment. Core Ledger makes anything transactable, literally anything. With Core Ledger's highly dependable, fast-to-implement products, businesses can reduce costs and improve processes. Individuals can benefit from the full ownership of their own assets and make transactions directly with another party. To learn more about Core Ledger's technology and how you can transform your business onto blockchain, visit coreledger.net. That's CoreLedger.net. coreledger.net.
I see your point, and it's a big discussion.
Yeah.
I think that's starting now.
Yeah, I think it was on one hand, I see that there are great ideas coming, with this technology for sure, in the messages. But what really concerns me is when I hear, when people say, when it sounds like, they are creating like political terms to me. How can you say that a technology is trustless? It's just bullshit. It's not trustless, I mean, my first book, it was an academic word, and it was about trusting in mobile payment. And when you look at trust from a sociological perspective, you see that trust is changing over years. When thousands of years, when we used the word trust, we always used it when we described our relation to the gods.
Interesting.
And this was for thousands of years, when I used trust, I meant my relationship to the gods. And with this, we had routines, and with this, we kind of described, we had prayers, and all those kind of interactions with those gods. And then our society changed, the whole system changed. And suddenly when persons, it became, the cities were created, and were managed, the government changed. And suddenly also the term trust changed. So the meaning of it. And suddenly it was describing more the interpersonal trust. With this, also the other rituals came, the handshaking, the making a contract with the signature, and I owe you something, all those things. And then these systems, the cities become countries, and also global money systems. And then we created, suddenly we developed in our societies the institutional trust. So not the one-on-one, the little commune, but I trust a bank. I trust a government. And Nicholas Luhmann described that as system trust. And what I see now is just another form of system trust. But it is a sort of a trust into the protocol.
Trust in numbers.
Trusting
right.
in an algorithm in the end. But trust is not gone. It's changing its format. And because we would not sit here if you would not, if we would not trust each other, or if you wouldn't trust, the plane that brought you here. So there are many moments that you trusted before we ended up here. So there is no society, there is no economy, there is nothing without trust. Trust is just changing. And how trust is, how it changes is, in the end, says a lot about how our social interactions are, what's the mindset of this, what's our mindset of our society.
I mean, that's interesting. Let's say we now talk about trustless systems.
Yeah.
What does that say about our society?
Yeah. What does this say about our society? Do we get more intelligent? Do we get more stupid? This is always the question that I think, we kind of be following like cows in a system, we're following the signals of the machine in the end. And if it's red, we stop. And if it's green, we go somehow, and this is a little bit, will it corrupt our free thinking? Do we have a free thinking? It becomes very philosophical. That's the question. And it is philosophical. And I think, the thing is, I don't know which philosopher said this. Was it Kant? Maybe. It was, what's freedom? And the answer is freedom is if you have the possibility to say no. And if a system doesn't allow you to say no, you are per se, you're very much, you're not free. And I think this is the thing, will those systems give us the opportunity to say no sometimes on the way we live? And this is the question that I have.
So meaning that's a criticism of immutability of that characteristic of blockchains.
Immutability, automatizing things, because when it comes to the consensus algorithm, I think, it is you're automizing a consensus. So where's the freedom to say no? Where's the discourse? Do we have a discourse anymore? Because we already, social media already corrupted our political discourse. And I think I'm not sure if this is like improving our political thinking of the many. Is it like, do they understand? Do the many understand? What kind of what they're signing into sometimes? And who can change it? Even if you are complaining that also legal systems today are very complex, still you're speaking the language. You could read it. Most of the people will not be able to read computer language. It will just not happen. Even if
especially not when machines write it.
Right. It's just it is another utopian picture. That everyone should become a programmer. This will not be the case because there are just differences in intelligence, in language, in many, many, many things. So it's a very yeah, it is just, you could say white beauty man, or very, a westernized, luxurious position to say this. If people have the equivalent like education and stuff, but it's even those people, and not everyone is like a programmer.
Interesting. I mean, it's good that you bring it up because that would have been one of my next questions. The skills for the future, and there. I mean, I often ask that questions to people I speak with, and of course, many say you need to be able to program, without hesitation. Some people say that. Obviously, it's programming.
Yeah.
But what do you think is a very important skill for people to, to play a part in the future?
I mean, programming. I think without me wanting it, I just learn it because it's a side effect. I'm not a coder. But I can read some sort of text to understand. But still, of course, I'm not a coder. What are the? I think a huge skill will be actually asking the right questions when it comes to technology, and being able to think critically. Just realistically, not even critical, constructive, I mean, this is what humans are always created technology. I mean, it's like we have a long track record in creating innovation, technology, whatever. So this will not go away. But I think the thing is now, with digitalization is that it becomes a more, it has a more indirect influence on our society and how we interact with each other and how we see the world and how we see nature around us, how we interact with nature and how we exploit nature. And I would just think that it is a very important skill to sometimes step out of this bubble and to kind of have a meta perspective on it and see what the real issues are that we are having in the world. And this is quite, of course, it's a challenging thing, to step out there and to watch it. And but still, I think this is one of the major skills, because you need this kind of meta perspective to understand why are we using this technology. Because the last years also around blockchain is very much, we have a technology-centered discussion. Now it slowly goes into the user-centered discussion. I would advise and would love, and I think it's super, super, super urgent to have a purpose-centered discussion. Why do we need all this shit? We have so much of it. We have so much stuff around us. And that maybe all this stuff, blockchain can bring but prove it. The people who are realizing it, they are the ones, who are coding these highways, these data highways, these protocols, this government system, and, but, everyone has problems. And I think this will not go away, just by having a technology. So meaning, critical thinking, meta perspective, asking the right question, purpose-centered.
How do you develop these skills? I mean, if let's say somebody says, oh yeah, that's exactly the skills I need, how would they go about developing them?
It's reading a lot of philosophical books, actually, because and this has nothing to do with technology. In the end, it's your own hard drive up there.
People forget they have a very powerful computer. They carry around with them all the time.
Every day, and to clean your hard drive up there, I think, and philosophical books who are kind of have a proven track record, because this is always the thing, this is always of course I love to be in innovation, and I love to be and I'm super excited about new technologies at the same time, but there's also there's always this next one atmosphere around it. And I I more and more appreciate old wisdom. That it's kind of still here, We still read Plato. We still read Mephisto, because there are some things that haven't changed. And we first, should understand what are those things before we are hard coding it into blockchain, because there people don't change. And it's and before you create systems that run, for instance, the global AI, what's the difference to imperialism? What's the difference? Just run by an AI where 3 people can understand what it does. It's imperialistic thinking. I mean, it's just, to understand what do we want to solve, and before we are kind of making a solution for everyone on the globe, it's kind of, I don't know, I like diversity. This is what I enjoy here in Europe.
Good point. What's your favorite book?
I mean, of course, there is Harari. I really admire at the moment very much. I read just lately some essays from Epicurus, old Greek. He studied happiness. I enjoyed a lot. What's my favorite book?
You know, if you mentioned these books that somebody should read to learn critical thinking, or just at least get some inputs about how to think more critically, what is a book there that you could recommend?
Okay, no, Nietzsche.
Wait, which one?
I think Zarathustra, of course. God is Dead, because it's very much about, you know, the mindsets and the gods that we are creating. And yeah, Nietzsche is great, an enormous thinker. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my spontaneous answer.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and we'll put a link in the description. You know, speaking of learning skills, I mean, we spoke about some of the skills that are good to have to cope with, you know, the future and digital technology or technology in general. What are some of these skills that you're currently learning for yourself?
I think what's this whole topic of tokenization, I think it's quite interesting, because there are so many things are coming together apart from just creating digital money. It's also this flavor of macroeconomics, which is coming in, a game theory. So I really enjoy reading about those things, because it makes our money system so tangible in a mathematical sense, I think, which is quite interesting. If you suddenly think, of course, and I also have a huge respect, you know, to create a system like this that we are having at the moment, even if it's, of course, there are a lot of things that are critical about it, but then it's just a mathematical thing, you know, to say that some have a lot of those numbers on their account and others have less. And it's just, you know, where more and more think about, it's equality, inequality. How can you create system that in the long run just create more equal, spreading wealth just more equally, or still dynamically, of course, you know, but just, you know, that people do not end up cannot act anymore because they do not have enough coins on their account, and become like depressive and creates a lot of anxiety, or like people go on the street because they just don't have enough. And I think, and when you like learn about token economics, it's just, you know, it seems like, can we not just, this is the thought that I have. It's like, can we not just, you know, make it more equal? Because in the end, it's just digital, it's just numbers. Of course, and the crypto scene did not prove it yet, you know? It's very hierarchical what happened there. It's not
a huge wealth concentration.
It's not a proof of concept that we saw so far. It's the opposite, actually. So I'm not a fan what happened the last years. You know, it's I think it's way too speculative. I mean, there are great, you know, thoughts, but the practice is horrifying. It's worse.
Speaking of horrifying, what are some developments, you know, apart from that inequality that's kind of taking hold? What are some other developments, you know, that you see that you find scary or troubling?
Yeah, I think, you know, on one hand, I think it's enormous, the speed that I see in this blockchain context. It's incredible. But I also had the chance to, just in the last month, to talk more with public institutions here in Berlin, and where there's a discussion about a digital strategy for Germany, and to kind of think about, so what should this paper, the strategy paper, look like? What's in there? What are the suggestions? What are the regulation maybe even? And what is really scary is that that the speed of working is so enormously different. I mean, the blockchain world, the community, everything, in a year, so much things happened, and they brought out a paper. This is how it feels, you know? So, and I think, and it's, and at the same time, I think it is necessary there need to be a discussion between them, because I don't believe in they are good and we are good and they are bad discussion. This is stupid. And, we are, need, you know, the many, and we are a community. And so there need to be an exchange of understanding, of knowledge, because, you know, I'm also, when I'm in these institutions, you know, I see also that these people try for sure to make a society run. And it's not easy. And the crypto world also proved in the last years that it's not easy, even if they have the best intentions. And so I see quite of a challenge to adopt them. The speed of the public and the private sector. Mm-hmm. It's because it's and at the same time I think it's because I think it's needed.
Do you think the public sector is kind of missing the boat?
They're so hard to try, of course not, and but it's there are. I think that's a little bit, you know, the problem between the political mind and the economical mind. The entrepreneurs and the people, you know, who are like the shakers and makers in this scene, they have an entrepreneurial mindset, or they want to see a result. They're result driven. Politicians, they are agenda setting driven. It's different. It's completely different.
Agenda setting.
Agenda setting. So they're like, okay, what kind of regulation should we do? You know, what is also, you know, in the sense, you know, that we find regulations for the many, you know, and what is the average sense? Would work for the many? You know, a little bit the Kant's categorical imperative, you know, and it's also quite challenging to kind of, you know, find this, especially in a topic when you have no clue what this thing is. And so.
Do you have, you know, in your career or also in your work, you know, as an advisor in this whole tech space, do you have any role models that inspire you?
Role model. That's a good question. There are so many, I think, you know, I mean, you know, I kind of, I love a lot of, most of them, maybe, you know, I love when I read texts from people, because it just shows me, you know, how they're seeing the world. And of course, there are many philosophers and just, writers. And I admire, for instance, you know, Harari a lot, because, or also others, you know, like David Graeber, you know, who are like coming from such a different angle and giving us an incredible understanding to better understand what technology wants in our society.
David Graeber wrote that book about debt.
Exactly. And but he's an anthropologist, you know, and he writes about an economical structure in the end, and which is absolutely more me being an economist. I thought this was really, there were many enlightening moments for me in this book. I thought, this absolutely makes more sense than any other economical book that I read, you know, classic ones. Of course, read Adam Smith and those things. But anyhow, so, and I admire those who are thinking broad, who are thinking really interdisciplinary, who are able to connect the dots and kind of understand, you know, to create this meta level, you know, because I think it's very rare. Something like Harari became rare, you know, like that he became so popular. It's amazing. It's because it's also a little bit, you know, the.
And he's a historian,
I
think.
It's incredible, but maybe the historians, they are the best, the anthropological people and the historians, they give you the insight, they give you the connections, and they make the connections, and I think those sorts of work is so important, and it's maybe more a role model of how you should think, and to connect the dots in the end, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good point. What's in the next few years? What's on the horizon for you?
What's on the horizon? I think there will be, of course, blockchain will be a part of it, or DLT, better to say. I think it's more, DLT, and distributed ledger technology, to not just throw around shortages. But still, I think that we will experience that it's not just about, of course, these one silo technologies. I see what's going to happen is, of course, it's going to be interlinked with other technologies, alt systems, and other exponential technologies, to use this term again, like AI. Artificial intelligence. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see the media convergence and how this will show up in the next years, and what the technology can do and cannot do. I imagine that the first solution is going to happen in the machine-to-machine realm, because there it's easier to test around. Especially in Europe, we have this GDPR situation. So of course, it's easier now to more understand. Okay, what solutions are there that makes our economy more resource efficient, more transparent, and our economy more stable for the many. And I hope that there will be the transparency that the technology actually, predicted from the beginning. But I think it is hard work to fulfill what actually this utopian picture was from the beginning. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point. Where can people find you?
So social media, of course, classic LinkedIn. Andrea Bauer, and there's also, of course, a website, andreabauer.org, or the consultancy, if people are interested in this, BEAM, it's BEAM -studio, like the studio, STUDIO, .com.
All right.
BEAM Studio.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, Andrea, this was great. Thanks a lot for taking time.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks so much for joining us today. More info on our guests and our sponsors is in the show notes of this episode and on the podcast website, theblockchainandus.com. To help people find this podcast, it's important that you download, subscribe, and give it a top rating and review on iTunes or on the podcast platform of your choice. I'm Manuel Staggers, and I thank you very much for listening.